Night Larry, and welcome to The Quiet Storm. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes or so. Tonight, we'll be talking about basket weaving, South American tribal basket weaving, and gazpacho. So, welcome to the show. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this wonderful ride that we call podcast. Oh my goodness. Maybe I should be Late Night Larry. I'm your host, Late Night Larry, and welcome to our show. I think the cold weather is getting to my brain. And actually don't have that much to talk about tonight. It's been kind of quiet, really just this freezing cold. So wherever you are, I hope your weather is getting warmer. I mean, it was cold where I am on the East Coast, and then we saw like minus 10s, minus 20s, minus 30s, minus 40s like this week in the middle of the country. So I'm sure you've been a little chilly. So hopefully this will keep you warmer listening to the show. And it's just me and Late Night Larry here tonight. So welcome to The Quiet Storm. And as a listener, I hope you tuned into last week's show. What really goes on behind the closed boudoir studio doors? For some reason, that episode got like way more downloads than usual. So I'm not sure what was going on with that, but I want to thank everybody for listening. And if this is like your first time stopping in, I'm your host, Michael. I am a women's photographer in New Jersey, worked with hundreds and hundreds of women through the course of my career. And we do this little show because you think it's easy. You think it's easy to find a photographer, but it's not. There are many pitfalls out there. So what we do here is answer some questions and spread some love so you can make smart choices when going out and choosing your photographer. So when you're finished and walking away, you walk away with some cute photos and a good experience, and you look back and go, yeah, that was a lot of fun, because you think by default that's what's going to happen. And as listeners of this show know, that's anything but sort of how it goes. It's a lot more work and a lot more pitfalls than you may expect. So each week we get into sort of like a question, explain a bit about what to look out for, so you know exactly what to ask your photographers and know what to look out for. So that's what we do. And I drink soda or whatever I'm drinking on. So another late night recording tonight. So we're going to get into this. We're going to talk about tonight's topic, which is why do so many boudoir photography businesses fail? And, you know, we're going to talk about this. Usually we're talking about client stuff. So we're going to talk about this from a little bit of a client's like sort point of view. But stick around, because this is kind of like interesting, and like I said, there's always a twist we do here to sort of involve the client side. I'm not really too interested in these crazy photographers, although there's a lot of photographers that listen to this show, because I really don't care what they do. More concerned about you, the people walking through the doors of these studios, so you know what to look out for. And like I said, make smart decisions as I'm trying to talk. And there we go. Make updates on my computer at the same time. I have a walnut-sized brain, so I can only focus on one thing at a time. So sorry for stuttering through that, but I think I got my situation all fixed. And so we're going to chat about this tonight, about why these businesses fail, what you need to look out for as a client. And then this is also going to talk about some photographer stuff too. It's not really the focus of the show, or really spend too much time with that, but we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. And this is not about bashing anybody. It's not about bashing new photographers. It's not about bashing established photographers, but more about shedding light on this weird industry and just highlighting some things that clients need to be aware of and issues, to avoid booking with photographers who may not have their act together. So that's what we're going to be chatting about here a little bit tonight in this cold weather. So if you feel like hanging out with Late Night Larry, go grab yourself a nice warm beverage. I'll wait for you. Maybe a little cafe latte. Maybe just some nice herbal tea. Put on your big fuzzy socks. Put your headphones on. Get comfy. I'll give you another minute. Comfortable? Yeah, just relax. Just breathe in. Breathe out. We're going to have a little discussion with me, Late Night Larry, and my audience tonight. And we're going to be chatting about why these crazy boudoir photography businesses fail, like all the time. And you know about this, then that way you won't get wrapped up in these human disasters out there. And that's what we're going to be chatting about for a while. And one thing that I guess is often overlooked when people get into and start this business is that it is very sort of specialized, requires an enormous amount of skill, business acumen, and a lot of persistence. And a lot of people jumping into this business bring maybe one or none of those. They're very unprepared. And you'd be like, how can you do that? Well, it happens all the time. As I'm talking, as I'm burping, because I'm drinking soda. It's gross. It's not very relaxing listening to me burp as you're lying there in bed in comfy socks and trying to listen to the show. But sorry, if I don't drink something, my voice just gets all scratchy. So we're going to get into this a little bit. And as I've talked about like 8 bazillion times on this show, often, there's, I was got Janie, MLM Janie. And, she's been in her MLM trying to rope everybody else into her pyramid scheme on Instagram, messaging everybody she knows about opportunities for business. And that didn't quite go the way that she thought it would. When she's a boss babe, girl power. And so she's not too happy with her MLM career. So Janie goes out to lunch one day with her friend Ashley, and they're sitting in a Chick-fil-A, and just randomly Janie decides to take a photo of her chicken sandwich. And then Ashley's, oh my God, Janie, that's a great picture. You should be a photographer. And then Janie goes, you think? And like 2 days later, typically Janie is launching her boudoir photography career. And not only that, she's changing the world. She's changing lives. And in the world of women's photography, that's pretty typical of how things kind of come about. And you have to be aware of this as like a client. Many women, and guys, but it's overwhelmingly women that are photographers in the business of boudoir. But they wake up one day and decide suddenly they're going to be starting a boudoir photography business. And not only that, they're changing lives. And they have zero photography skills or experience, right? But yet, they're on some website, I'm a pro now, and I'm healing women. Magically, they can do this. Just a couple days ago, they were in a pyramid scheme, and now they are healing women. And then they'll put all of this propaganda up on their brand new website about fixing and healing and saving lives and putting people back together. And they'll have this whole mission statement going on and how they're changing the world. And often, a mission statement is not really enough. And what often happens to many of these people who launch their business that way with no skills, experience, business skills, or anything else is that the end product is often overlooked or sort of forgotten about. Because this changing, and we're going to get to this a little bit more, this changing lives somehow takes precedent. The photography sort of takes a back seat. And in the end, the result, the photography doesn't really match the message that these people are blasting all over the place in their newfound job. And really, I think what this boils down to, it's a big pitfall, is that a lot of these people like the idea of calling themselves a pro photographer or a boudoir photographer. That's so interesting. Janie, you're a photographer now? You're a pro photographer? Tell me more. So interesting. Jane, she's so interesting. Tell me more about this. So people like the idea of calling themselves like a woman's photographer. Maybe they think it's like some artistic lifestyle. Or more importantly, they tell, no, I'm changing lives. Every day I wake up, I am changing the lives of women and I'm making them better. Me. I'm doing that. So I think they like that idea. They like this idea of somehow they're going to have this, flexible schedule, work when they want to, and this perceived glamour. But there's often no thought, or they underestimate the actual work and skill and practice that's involved. And it's just like anything else. It's just like painting. I can't paint. As much as I think I want to be a professional, I can't paint or draw to save my life. So no amount of me saying I'm a professional artist drawing now. I could. It's just not going to happen. I just don't have that talent. And it's very similar, I think, in photography. People just get in, and there's some people who have that eye and that skill to do that, and a lot of people just do not. And I don't think it's something you can learn like that either. Again, you can sing or you can't sing. There's no kind of like, I'm going to teach myself to sing. So in photography, it's very similar. And they like this whole idea of telling, I'm in business now. I'm changing lives. They like the idea of it more than the actual business itself. And there's really no interest in actual learning about photography. Learning about lighting and posing and more importantly, like editing and how to work with people and marketing and all this stuff can take years to learn well. There's no commitment to really learning the business as a whole. And because in the photography business, clicking a button on a camera is just a small part of like everything else that goes on. There's a whole slew of business skills that you have to know as well, but that's not important. Because I'm changing lives. Changing lives. Do you hear me? I'm changing lives. So that whole part kind of just gets overlooked. And there's really no willing to commit, grind, and learn, and figure this all out. And then these people just fade away. And I always kind of, it's not easy to learn. It's a lot of practice to learn, and editing takes a lot of practice to come up with a beautiful boudoir kind of style of editing photos. And then you can learn lighting and stuff like that. It's not that hard, but it takes repetition. And this is something that you do like as an amateur because you just love it. You just like the art of photography. So I always tell the people, to ask any prospective photographer, like, how long were you into photography before you started calling yourself a pro? And you'll get these looks. And that's a big red flag because people, find joy in that. If they're really into photography, it's that learning process. It's about enriching yourself and learning all about this. You don't start off thinking you're like a pro. You're just learning all this technical stuff and how to do it because you want to make great photos. But for this group of people to change their lives, when they just bypass that whole thing and go right to the changing lives. And they know nothing about how to ride a bicycle, but yet they're calling themselves like a professional bicycle racer, and that really kind of is this whole sort of Ozempic kind of approach to photography. It's like, I'm not going to diet. I'm not going to exercise. I'm just going to take a pill. Why would I do all that work? That's for suckers when I can take a pill. That's like the American way. Why put in the work? There's always got to be a cheaper version of whatever you're looking for. There's always got to be a quicker version to get, take the Ozempic. Why exercise? Why make yourself better when I can take a pill? I can just take a pill. I just need a subscription. Then I can change lives. I could go to my doctor and get a change the world pill. And then I can be a photographer. So it really, there's not a lot of desire to really learn about that. Just got to cut to the chase. I'm calling myself a pro and I'm changing lives. And sadly, sorry for that group, there's a lot going on, but they just really lack the skill and ability, and these businesses kind of fade away. So as a client, what does this mean to you? I mean, it means you really need to be wary of these photographers who talk a lot about empowerment and all this other stuff and don't really have the work to kind of back this up. Because what really matters most is skill. Narratives don't matter if the photos suck. And this is something that really is just overlooked by this whole narrative generation of photographers. I'm changing lives. Healing women. Don't you know that the women need me? Because, being a photographer isn't enough. They always have to give themselves a job bigger than photography. It means so much more. So being a pro golfer doesn't happen overnight. Just because you buy an expensive set of golf clubs, you still suck. Right? So just buying a camera and saying that you're changing lives doesn't work when you have no skill and you've put in no learning and no practice. It's the same thing. And so that whole group of people who that's their motivation, wake up one day, now I'm a pro, they're typically gone, like right away. Goodbye. Because they just don't want to put in the work. They don't want to learn. They want to jump all that because it's not necessary. The camera does all the work. All I have to do is saying I'm changing lives. And it's not really how it works. You take shitty photos, no one's going to come and see you. And this is just a lack of self-awareness on an order that you have never could ever understand as a client. So got to be very, very careful about who you select. And as you can see, this is kind of a theme. And you say, is that what really happens? Women in MLMs really waking up and then the next day calling themselves pros every day in women's photography. Well, it happens in photography in general, but every day, all the time, but they're changing lives, but they're just really bad. So they don't last very long. And that really brings us to point number 2 is that most people, again, and a big chunk of them are those wake up in the morning and changing lives people, but there's lots of others. They just have zero business or marketing skills. I mean zero. And I mean zero. Because they're changing lives. So nothing else matters. Again, there's this whole narrative that as long as they shout this, that's all they need. And they're just fooling themselves. It's like they're in this, echo chamber that's been going on in women's photography for almost 10 years. As long as you say you're changing lives, that's all you need to do. Nothing else kind of matters. So you've seen this crazy thing going on in women's photography over the past decade, which you really need to be careful of. And the truth of the matter is, yeah, the photography is important because that's what you're selling and that's why people are coming to you. But as I noted, that's just a real small part of everything else. And what I mentioned was marketing, client acquisition, pricing, financial planning. All this stuff is important. Ask Late Night Larry. All that stuff, and you don't learn it in 48 hours. You don't pick all that stuff up just because your friend Ashley told you took a great photo at Chick-fil-A, and suddenly now that means I'm going to change lives. No, there would be really no thought to go and learn anything about this first. Why would you do that? You just go and say, I'm a pro photographer and I'm changing lives. Why learn about business? I'll just post pictures on Instagram. See, this was their marketing strategy, just posting pictures on Instagram and putting in that picture. She rocked it. She rocked it. And, people don't realize that's Janie's friend in the picture. It's not a real client. She just talked her into taking photos, even though the woman was completely uncomfortable. You gotta help me start my business. And then she rocked it. Look at her. She's on fire. And you got to put the little fire emoji. Fire. So they think that's marketing. But really, there's just a whole lack of business knowledge. And they're just going to go on Instagram and start, posting photos, thinking that one of these photos is going to just go viral and make them insanely successful as a woman's photographer, having zero understanding of acquisition costs or advertising, website, SEO, network, anything else. It's just one of those kitchen nightmare situations where, Ramsey is always in there talking about people. What was your experience before running a restaurant? Well, as a truck driver, I thought it was a good idea. When these people buy a restaurant with knowing nothing about that business, and then they're giving people food poisoning, because the whole place is like a mess. It's very similar. Very similar. These people have no clue what they're doing, but they're changing lives. So what does that mean to you? Again, as a client, you got to be super cautious of these pop-up photographers. And you always, always, always have to ask how long they've been around, ask about their experience, ask about their business processes, their background, their track record, how many people they've worked with. If they don't have a lot of good information, it's a red flag again, and you need to start looking for other photographers. And it's just a shame, like you said, because you have to be super vigilant. You have to look out for yourselves when going out there and looking for a photographer, because just because someone has a website means nothing. And Google doesn't know, and we talk about this all the time. Google doesn't know their experience. Google doesn't know if they know what they're doing. Google doesn't know if they're talented. It's just nothing. Google may know they're in Jackson, Mississippi, but that's about it. They don't know anything else about what's going on behind the scenes at that photography business. They don't know that she started 3 weeks ago and left her sparkling MLM career, and now suddenly she's shouting she's changing lives with zero skills. So those businesses that start that way, these people have no business experience or marketing skills, just fail. Again, just wiped out another huge percentage of photography businesses that aren't going to last another 3 or 4 months, and then they're gone. And you just don't want to walk into that type of a situation, because it's not going to be good. And saying, why? Well, why? Why does this happen? How can this possibly happen with all the hundreds? I'm talking about thousands. I'm talking about thousands of probably photography businesses every year. And you're like, Michael, that's crazy. I'm like, no, that's not crazy. You just have to open your eyes. And there's a real simple reason why this happens. And it is just simply because in the world of photography, it's a very low barrier to entry, but a very high barrier to success. So anybody can take their credit card, go on Amazon, buy a camera, and the next day start calling themselves a pro photographer. I'm changing lives. Anybody could do that, because there isn't a lot of capital cost. There's no board of photographers. People have to go through some kind of exam or skill test. They just wake up on a Sunday, order that camera, and Tuesday they're calling themselves a pro. So anybody can do this. So that means there are way more people who get in, whether initially they're passionate about it or, like I said, who knows? Because usually
People do not wake up from one day from nothing and call themselves a pro if they really have a passion about the art of photography, like I said, because usually that just starts as a personal journey. They're doing it because they love it. They're not advertising, not talking to anybody else about photography. They're doing it for themselves. So people who wake up one day and suddenly 2 days later have anyone who starts a photography business, that's not going to work out so good. And unlike any traditional career that requires training or certification, there's no real vetting process to boudoir photographers. Anybody can call themselves like a pro. So what does this mean to you as a woman looking for an anniversary gift? Well, it means that the boudoir and all photography businesses are flooded with people who are not ready to be photographers. And this is what we talk about in this show. When I talk about minefields, is that there's so many people out there unqualified to call themselves photographers, and then they disappear. I mean, it's very Darwinian. They're gone in a couple months, 6 months, and a year at the longest. They realize this is not easy. They're not getting clients. And then, they go into that death spiral of, I'm going to charge less and I'm going to charge less. And they're charging $30, $25 for a session. Or they're doing way too many sessions and they burn out and it's just bad. It's just bad work. And so it's like, do you ever see those like baby turtles where there's like the eggs all hatch at once on the beach and there's like 10,000 of these baby turtles all trying to get to the ocean and they're getting picked off by the seagulls and only like 3 or 4 of them ever like make it to the sea and grow up from like the 10,000. So that's what like photography is like. Every week there's probably hundreds of people starting businesses. I'm changing lives. And then all those people, like one maybe survives longer than a year because they just, it's like one of those things where they wake up with zero preparation or skill, like I said. And if you see people running these huge discounts or free sessions, it's a warning sign. And that's why you have to really look for longevity in this business and experience and how long they've been involved in photography before they started calling themselves a pro. Ask them when they started doing this. Ask them how long they've been interested in before they called themselves a pro. And if the person has a good story or how they love photography and they really trained themselves or taught themselves how to do it, and there's a better chance they're a little bit more passionate and skilled and had this eagerness to learn. Does that make sense? Think about that for a second. I know it's late, but I think I'm making sense. No? So that's why, too, you have to ask so many questions to any women's photographer before you start handing over money, because God only knows who you're giving it to. You can't rely on what you see on a website or all the wording that they put. And just something for everybody out there that the narrative generation of photographers are done. That is just finished. And over this past decade was this huge explosion, like I noted earlier, of photographers pushing this empowerment and healing and self-love. And, the photographers went into this whole thing where the photography didn't matter. What mattered more was them fixing mental health issues. And a whole group of people skewed into this mental health narrative thing where they're healing and fixing and, they're doing a lot of this to distract from what was really going on. And that era is finished. It just became this massive echo chamber of all these people. I'm fixing lives, and I'm fixing lives too, and I'm healing. We're all healers. We're changing women. It's just like crazy. And you never would hear anybody talking about creating great photos or creating great experiences or creating beautiful artwork. You know, it was all this just very political fixing mental health issue thing that every woman is broken. Everyone out there needs the help of a woman's photographer. And this just kind of went on and on and on for years and years and grew. And they all looked at each other. And what happened was, well, I can fix insecurities. Well, if you can fix insecurities, I can heal pain. And if you can heal pain, then I can fix trauma. And they just constantly tried to outdo each other with, you know, healing more and more serious mental health conditions, and at the sake of ever learning how to do quality work. And what they didn't realize was women don't really care about that. They just want a cute gift. They just want a cute Christmas gift or a cute wedding gift. Women are not broken. Nobody, even if they did need mental health, isn't looking through the phone book and say, I'm having a breakdown. I know what, I'll call a woman's photographer who was in an MLM just 3 weeks ago. I'm sure that's the cure to my mental health ills. You know, and the issue was just all these photographers relying on these narratives with little to no skills and trying to convince themselves and the other peers that this is what women's photography was about. And again, they never stopped to think that narratives don't pay bills, that all these women wanted were just some cute, great photos. They don't want inspirational quotes. You know, they're not looking to be healed. And, oh, yes, you are, because you don't know that you're broken. So there was a whole generation of photographers who were all wrapped up in this narrative that they were so much more than photographers. They're healers, fixing people, life coaches, spiritual Sherpas, or whatever you want to call them. And as a client, you have to be very skeptical and ask a lot of questions when you come across someone's website who just uses all this language: transformation, we're healing, we're empowering. You know, when the focus is on all of this, and they're not really talking about how into their photography they are, or how skilled they want to become, or how much they practice. And if the focus isn't on the work or like the client experience, and it's about all of this, it's about, you know, that's not a good sign. And the truth is, and I don't care about these photographers again, because they can do whatever they want. I just have to warn the women who walk into these situations that often these businesses, again, do not last and fail because they fail to believe that, or fail to understand that most women just want a cute boudoir album for Christmas. That's really what it boils down to. It's as simple as that. There isn't 8 levels of mental healing attached to that. It's pretty darn simple. They want to have some fun. They want a cute gift. And that's really what it boils down to. And they've swerved off the rails like a decade ago and kept swerving, alienating huge amounts of their customers without even realizing it, because they so latched on to this idea that they needed to fix people, you know, that they didn't even see in front of them that they were just destroying their own businesses. So a lot of those businesses fail for political reasons, again, skill reasons. And one thing as a client you need to do is understand that great photography will stand on its own. It does not need paragraphs of explanation on how it's going to change your life and fix you and heal you. So just be very careful of these narrative photographers, and these businesses just do not last. They just do not, and fail, because you cannot alienate like 80% of your clients. And, you know, women are just not broken. And I've always told the funny stories of the women who have come in to work with me, of the phone calls they had with some of these other photographers. And they're like, I was going to go with this woman. And even on the phone consultation, she was talking about, she's going to rebuild me. And all I wanted was an anniversary gift. You know, so these people are just like, oh. And hopefully, you know, that is coming to an end. And those people will be wiped out. And I think the new generation of photographers really needs to understand that that is 100% not necessary. You need to focus on beautiful photography and just having cute pictures and giving your clients a great time, and you will flourish because that's what people want. And as a client, just be really careful of those narrative photographers, unless you want a little bit of boudoir with your mental health counseling, then in that case, by all means. But usually these businesses are not hanging around too long, and hopefully that group of photographers is behind us, and the next generation will bring things back on track. And I also want to talk about a few other reasons why boudoir photographers often fail. And it's also because they just fail to develop any kind of a style whatsoever. So many photographers simply just copy what they see online, or they go to some photography fake guru, and they just copy what somebody else is doing. And they really fail to create like a unique style or vision of their own. They're just copying somebody else's stuff. And I think this is really rolls into the previous things where they're just not that into the photography and the art part of it. It's a complete afterthought, and they're always worried on the narrative section. So they don't even see that they don't have a style, or they're just copying. And I looked out and I see people doing the same freaking photos, the same poses, the same exact photo. You can't tell which photographers, they all look the same. And it's not great. So a lot of photographers fail to develop a style, and it's like playing a guitar. Now, when you're first learning to play a guitar, you're just fumbling through it, right? You're just lucky you can play a chord or then like a song, and it takes a long, long time. You're stuck in your bedroom practicing before you have any degree of skill. And then probably after a few years, or God knows how many hours you need to put in, and you become pretty proficient, you may realize you're developing a style, right? It's a function of becoming really adept at what you're doing and mastering what you're doing. It kind of just happens. It's not, I don't think you think about it. You just kind of develop that particular style. So that's what also happens in your photos. And then not having a style is really like a function of, again, just not being really good at what you're doing. You just haven't gotten to that level yet. You haven't put in the time. You haven't learned about developing this style. And it's a shame. And I think it's a byproduct of these narrative photographers, again, who are more worried about, healing than the actual art form. Then there are those, like I noted, they just have poor business planning. They have no pricing structure. Or pricing structure that makes absolutely no sense. Boudoir photography can be cyclical. They don't understand this. Things go up and down, and in slow times, they're not prepared, and that wipes them out. They have no long-term strategy of any kind. Their strategy is just posting a photo on Instagram of their friend that they forced into taking boudoir photos. And then, as I noted earlier, in part, they just don't understand how much work it is. There is just little to no comprehension of how much effort is required, staying up late, learning, editing photos, learning new techniques, handling client inquiries, marketing, blogging, blah, 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 over and over. There's so much work involved in doing that. And success could take years, because boudoir is small. It's a niche business. It takes a long time to grow. Those expecting quick money, they get discouraged and they fail, and then they're gone, because they think, again, why put in the work to lose weight when all I could do is just take a quick Ozempic? Why would I want to put in the work? So again, very few of these people want to put in the effort and the work, and they just fail. And as a client, as I noted, a well-established, talented photographer will have a refined, consistent style, beautiful style. There's a lot of them out there in their photos. If someone's website is scattered, it's all over the place, you got to start asking some hard questions. And those who do not develop a cute style, they're gone. If they don't put in that hard work, they're gone. You know, and you just really want to avoid this. Like, you just want to avoid going to a bad restaurant. Now, inevitably, they start out with these high hopes. And what happens in many of these cases is this race to the bottom. And what you'll see is they originally think, I'm changing lives and doing that whole thing. And then that really doesn't go quite the way they thought it would, kind of like the MLM. And suddenly they start lowering their prices. You know, and then they wanted to charge here, now they're here, now they're here, now they're here, now they're here. And then really what they wind up with is just these bargain hunters who don't value anything or quality. And then even if they do wind up getting some customers at $50 a session, they're burning themselves out and earning what, $1 or $2 an hour. And you know, and people don't get it that, you know, when you think of like, and they'll label themselves as these like faux kind of high-end photographers. They pretend to be like they're really high-end photographer, but again, these are the people who lack skill and talent. They just like to market themselves as that without anything going on that really supports that. And they'll, you know, the whole thing is just like bananas. But you don't really see. Let's use an example like you know, like Gucci or Louis Vuitton. What do I know about that? But like these high-end brands, they're not really in a battle with like Target, are they? Gucci in their executive room isn't going, oh my God, Target just came out with a $12 handbag. How are we going to sell ours for $3,000 when they're making a $12 one in Target? We're doomed. Doesn't really work that way, does it? And this same thing kind of applies to photographers. You know, cheap means kind of low value, low perception. And as I noted, these people know nothing about marketing. And just as a client, always be very aware of this too good to be true kind of pricing, because it often, again, rolls into all these other things: inexpensive, low quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And professionals who really know about running business, you're not going to find $50 sessions. They understand their value as a specialty, and they charge like accordingly. And again, it's not the perfect example, but think about like specialist doctors. You know, they're going to charge a lot more than going to a you know, an urgent care kind of a situation. And it's very similar with photographers. Those people who are established, find their niche, using high quality products, or they're super experienced, their pricing is not worried. Not worried about someone opening up and charging $50 because they're changing lives. It doesn't affect their business because they've got a good structure. They've got a whole good thing going that they've invested in. That kind of a thing doesn't really affect them. So as a client, you just got to be looking out for these cheapy kind of photographers. It's a race to the bottom thing where they're all trying to undercut each other just to get a few, because it's not going to be a good situation for you. And it always reminds me of, these places are long gone now, and I can't think of the name of it. One of those deal websites. It's like I haven't heard from them in like 8 years or probably longer, and I'm just drawing a blank, and it'll pop into my brain. But like those deal websites that used to mail out those like super low coupons for like restaurants and stuff like that, and I used to get calls from them all the time, and forever, ever trying to get me to go on like one of those deal websites, and they always wanted you to keep your prices below like $50. And what people don't realize, like, geez, I'm going to look this up now because it's like driving me nuts. So just pause for a second because this is driving me. That went bankrupt. There was a couple of them. I'm not going to be able to find it. I can't think of the name of these deal websites, and I don't want to bring the show to a a halt, but there was a couple. One started with an L, and I can't remember the other one, but they would email blast out all their customers, their cheap deals for like restaurants, like you can get a hot dog for 84 cents or whatever and they took all these businesses and they would call you and they'd be like, but Mike, think of all the business you'll get. And think of all the business I'll get. And as a women's photographer who charges like $1,000+, you want me to put coupons for $50 out, and of that $50, your website takes like 40 or 50% of it. So I'm going to get like $30 to do like a photo session. Yeah, but you'll make all the money in the purchases that they'll make after, all the upgrades you can charge them. And they got so many photographers to go and do this. And, I was like, no way. There's no way. I don't work for like 50 cents an hour to do something like this. And all the people going and buying $50 boudoir session coupons are not my customer. And secondly, those people are not going to be upgrading to anything because the only reason why they're doing that is to get like a $50 like boudoir session. And how can you even afford? I can't even flip the lights on for $50, but you'll make it up in volume. And these people were so hell-bent on getting you onto these deal websites. They would just spout any kind of nonsense to get you in there. And I utterly refused. I could not get them to stop like calling me, and they would call me every few weeks. So you got to get on here. We'll let you charge $75. No. And they never stopped. And then they finally all went out of business. I know Google had one. There was a couple, and they're kind of all gone now, these deal websites. But, that's not the path to riches. Right? Charging less and less and less. It's a sure way to go out of business. And that's why a lot of those photographers are gone, even though my brain can't remember the names of these websites. If someone remembers, just write it in the comments below the show, because I can't remember what those deal website names were. And then we'll wrap it up on that, and just a couple of closing thoughts here. The show's gone almost 45 minutes now, but a quick message to any aspiring boudoir photographers listening to this is that it's skill first, business second, narratives last. An advice to the clients is you've got to do so much homework before booking. Look way beyond the messaging. Focus on the quality of work, the business longevity and experience, and just ask a lot of questions. And there are so many boudoir photographies that come and go like that just because the people are unprepared, don't know what they're doing, lack skill, lack experience, lack business acumen, don't know how to market, don't know how to do anything, don't know SEO, don't know how to build websites, don't know how to do this, but they're changing lives. So just really, really be wary of narratives out there when you are shopping for your photographer. And the bottom line, as I noted, low barrier to entry, high barrier to success in this business, and it is not for the weak. The ones who will last are the ones willing to grind, learn, develop expertise, adapt. I've had to adapt multiple times, and so few people really want to put in the work. And it's harder now than it was a decade ago. Way harder now. But it's just that a lot of people just do not want to learn and put in the work, and they do not want to get up every day at 5 a.m. and go to the gym to build that muscle. They just want the Ozempic. They're not going to eat less. They just want to cut, and it doesn't work. It's not a formula for success. And for the last 10 years, they relied on Ozempic, not putting in the work. And so many of those businesses just failed and left and poofed and went away. And that's it. And I could go on for that for another hour and a half on all these fails of these business, but I just wanted to put in a few. And for the clients, like I said, it's why it's so important to ask questions, because you don't know if that website you've been looking up for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if 3 weeks ago that person was in an MLM, knows nothing about photography. So you have to ask those questions. As I always say, how long have they been in business? What's their experience before photography? Are they outsourcing their editing? What is their privacy policy? How are they securing your photos after your session is finished? And it goes on and on and on. And you will be shocked. You will be shocked from the no answers, the non-answers, the I don't knows, that you will hear from some of these photographers. And you got to weed through it, as we always say, because it's going to take more work on your part than you think it may. But when you find somebody in your area who has been skilled and they love what they're doing and they practice, and they know about business skills and working with clients and they're up to date on all this and they just really enjoy their job, you will be rewarded as a client, as I always say, with a great experience, great photos, and you will walk away looking back on that saying, wow, that was a lot of fun. And you can avoid those sad experiences. And I say you're not in physical danger, but you're just going to be wasting your money, have a poor experience, poor photos, and everything else about it is going to be poor. It's like going into a bad restaurant, So you got to ask these questions before you go in and get with any photographer. And that's why so many of these businesses fail in short order. It's just because they're started when they should have never been started. And the people don't want to put in the work, the effort to learn 90% of what they need to know to sort of have these businesses have any chance of success. So that's our little show for this week. Hopefully that was entertaining and educational for you. And Late Night Larry enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, again, you can leave them on the comments on YouTube, down on Spotify. I'll let you leave comments or questions, or if you have something you'd like me to help you with, just reach out to me on my website. I'm happy to answer any questions. I get people emailing me a couple times a month from this show, and I'm happy to take time to answer any questions you may have about working with a boudoir photographer. So that's all we got for this week. This is Late Night Larry signing off from the Quiet Storm, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.